You don't fall apart all at once. It starts quietly, when you stop singing in the shower, when your favorite food just tastes like calories, when payday feels like a reminder, not a reward. That's how it begins. And the truth is brutal. It's not depression that gets you first. It's numbness. Everyone tells you to stay strong, push through, focus on the positive. But no one tells you what to do when you're alone in your room, and the silence feels heavier than the bills. They say life is about growth. But what if you've grown tired of surviving? What if you looked into the mirror today and didn't recognize who you've become? This video isn't about motivation. It's not about success hacks or morning routines. It's about the abyss, that dark, quiet place inside you that no one talks about. But you know it's there. I'm going to take you into it. Not to scare you, but to show you something no one else dares to say. Sometimes falling apart is the beginning of something real. And if you stay until the end, you'll understand why the darkness you've been hiding from might be the exact place where your power has been waiting all along. There's a kind of silence that doesn't come from the outside world. It's not about the absence of sound. It's the absence of direction. You feel it when you wake up and realize you've been moving for years, working, surviving, keeping up, but not going anywhere. It's that split second where your soul whispers, "Why am I even doing all this?" And in that stillness, something darker shows up. The abyss. It doesn't scream. It doesn't chase you. It just waits. And somehow, its silence feels louder than all the noise around you. That's when you realize the abyss doesn't threaten you with death. It seduces you with the idea that nothing matters, and that's far more dangerous than fear. Because when you believe your struggle has no meaning, that's when the real poverty begins. Not in your wallet, but in your spirit. Some people think the abyss is a place only for the broken. They're wrong. The abyss calls to the strong too, especially those who've worked hard, fought through life, carried others, but never stopped to carry themselves. It shows up in quiet moments, right after you've paid your rent and there's barely anything left. Or when you're sitting on the bus at 6 a.m., wondering if this is what adulthood was supposed to feel like. The abyss doesn't care about your status. It cares about your emptiness. That hidden corner inside you where dreams once lived. It feeds on your detachment. Not the kind that makes you free, but the one that makes you numb. And in that numbness, you start to confuse survival with purpose. But they're not the same thing. I've seen men ignore the call for years, drowning it out with overtime, alcohol, or scrolling for hours on their phones. They say they don't have time to think about these things, but deep down, they know. The abyss doesn't need your attention. It only needs your silence. The longer you avoid it, the more it shapes you in the background. Suddenly, you're snapping at people, forgetting what makes you laugh, resenting those who seem to have clarity. And it's not because you're weak. It's because you've been carrying too much without stopping to ask, is this weight even mine? The abyss grows strongest when you mistake distraction for direction. And most people are too tired to tell the difference. But here's the twist. No one tells you. The abyss is not your enemy. It's your mirror. It shows you what's missing. Not to break you, but to wake you. Because sometimes, the only way to find clarity is to first face confusion. Think about it. When was the last time you truly sat with your own darkness without trying to escape it? That's the moment the call begins. Not when everything falls apart, but when everything looks fine on the outside and still feels wrong on the inside. That gap between what you live and what you long for, that's where the abyss lives. And it won't stop whispering until you either answer or collapse from pretending you don't hear it. If you've ever stood at a job you hate, watching the clock tick while your dreams dissolve behind your eyes, that's the call. If you've ever looked at your bank account and felt that cold, tightening breath of, I can't do this forever, that's the call. It's not drama. It's not weakness. It's your soul asking you to listen. Most people don't. They fear the discomfort. They fear that if they stop, even for a second, everything will fall apart. But what they don't realize is, it's already falling. Just slowly, quietly. And the abyss? It's not asking you to fall. It's asking if you're ready to climb, but in a direction you've never gone before. Real transformation doesn't start with a dream. It starts with discomfort, the kind that makes you restless in your own skin. The kind that whispers questions you don't want to answer, like, who am I really doing this for? Or, what part of me did I abandon just to survive? These aren't small questions. They're identity-level questions. And they don't come from motivational speeches or vision boards. They come from the abyss. That's where real growth begins. Not with sunlight, but in the soil, in the shadows, where you realize that your power isn't in pretending everything's fine. It's in finally admitting it's not. This is why I don't trust comfort, not when it's used as a shield. Because comfort can be a trap. It tells you to stay quiet, stay in line, keep your head down. But deep inside, your heart is screaming for more. Not more money, though that might help, but more meaning, more why. Because the truth is, you can have a steady job and still feel poor. You can have followers online and still feel invisible. The abyss makes you face that contradiction. It strips away the image and asks, what's left when you stop pretending? And that question is terrifying. But it's also where something new begins. Not everyone answers the call. Some turn away. Others distract themselves until they forget they were ever called at all. But a few, just a few, decide to look into the darkness and say, show me. Not because they're fearless, but because they're tired of living half a life. Those are the ones who begin a different journey, one where power isn't about controlling others, but reclaiming themselves. It's not glamorous. There are no medals, but there's clarity, there's direction. And once you take that first honest step, the abyss changes. It doesn't disappear, but it loses its power to paralyze you. And that's when something else begins to stir beneath the surface. No one notices when it begins. There's no crash, no scream, no headline. Just a slow unraveling. You still go to work. You still smile at the cashier. You still post the filtered photo with a caption about gratitude. But inside, you're vanishing. Piece by piece. That's what makes the fall so dangerous. It doesn't look like a fall. It looks like survival. You wake up earlier, stay up later, trying to get ahead, but you never really do. Your days blur. Your purpose fades. You're not sinking in water. You're sinking in routine. And that kind of drowning doesn't make noise. It just steals your voice, one day at a time. People talk about burnout like it's something you notice. But real collapse hides behind functionality. You're still moving, but something's gone. Your spark, your fire. The small joys that used to light you up, music, laughter, fresh air, now feel like chores. You begin to resent the people who seem light, free, inspired. You scroll past their success stories and feel nothing but tightness in your chest. And still, you tell yourself, I'm fine. That lie becomes your morning coffee. Your paycheck becomes your proof that you're okay. But deep down, you know, something's off. Something's slipping. And the worst part is, you can't tell when it started. You look around and wonder how other people made it. They talk about finding balance, passion, freedom. And you nod politely, but secretly you think, they don't live in my world. Because in your world, rent doesn't wait. Groceries don't discount themselves. Kids still need to eat. That's what makes this fall so cruel. It disguises itself as duty. You're praised for being reliable, responsible, disciplined. But no one sees what it's costing you. No one hears the silence after you close the door at night. That moment where you sit on the edge of the bed and think, is this all there is? And maybe you don't say it out loud, but the abyss hears it, loud and clear. It's not always sadness that signals the fall. Sometimes it's numbness, the absence of emotion, a hollow kind of calm. You don't cry, you just don't care anymore. Not about the news, not about your dreams, not even about your birthday. That's when the abyss begins to take shape inside you, not as a monster, but as apathy. And that's worse. Because when you're angry, you still believe something can change. But when you're numb, you've already given up silently. You go through the motions. You say, "This is life." But deep down, there's a quiet echo that says, "No, this is death in slow motion." And what do people do when they feel this fall? They blame themselves. They think they're lazy, weak, unmotivated. But that's not the truth. The truth is, they've been running on empty for so long that even the idea of rest feels like a failure, and society doesn't help. It sells hustle like salvation. Tells you that if you're not growing, you're dying. But what they don't say is, growth doesn't happen in exhaustion. Real transformation needs room to breathe. It needs space. And space is a luxury most people can't afford, especially those living paycheck to paycheck. So instead of healing, they perform. Instead of pausing, they push, until they forget they're falling at all. Here's what most won't tell you. You can be good at your job, loved by your family, praised by your friends, and still be falling. Because the fall isn't about what you do. It's about what you stop feeling. Your disconnection, your disillusionment, your fading sense of self. That's what the abyss feeds on. Your abandonment of who you used to be. And it doesn't happen all at once. It happens when you stop singing in the car. When you stop daydreaming at stoplights. When you stop noticing the way sunlight hits the wall in the morning. Little things. That's how the abyss wins. Not with violence, but with silence. But the fall also reveals something powerful. It shows you the cost of denying your truth. Every time you say yes when you mean no. Every time you shrink so others can feel comfortable. Every time you smile to keep the peace. Those moments pile up. They become weight. And eventually, that weight breaks you. Not out loud, but inwardly. But here's the secret. When you break inwardly, you also begin to open. You start asking different questions. Not how do I get more, but what am I missing? Not how do I fix this, but what do I need to release? And those questions, they matter. They mark the beginning of the climb. Because at some point, if you're lucky or desperate, you'll pause. Just for a second. And in that pause, you'll realize you're not just tired, you're empty. Not because you failed, but because you forgot to include yourself in the life you've been building. That realization, that's not weakness. That's awareness. And awareness is the first crack in the shell, the first breath after holding it for too long. It doesn't fix everything, but it invites something back. You. The part of you that remembers your purpose, your curiosity, your hunger for meaning. And that's when you start to see the rope, the one hanging quietly in the corner, the one no one talks about, the one that leads up, not out. And from here, the decision begins. Some people never climb back. And that's the truth no one wants to say out loud. Not everyone makes it out of the abyss. Some get comfortable there, because darkness can be familiar, predictable, safe in a twisted way. You stop expecting, stop hoping, stop risking. And when nothing matters, nothing hurts. That's how people stay stuck. Not because they love the fall, but because they fear what it would take to rise again. Climbing back means facing everything you buried. It means owning your resentment, your regrets, your choices. It means becoming someone new and grieving who you used to be. But there are others, quiet ones, people no one believed in, People who had every reason to give up and didn't. They don't climb fast. They don't climb pretty. Sometimes they crawl. Sometimes they slip. But they move because something in them refuses to stay in the dark. Maybe it's a promise they made to their kids. Maybe it's the memory of who they were before the wait. Or maybe it's a single moment, a stranger's kindness, a song on the radio, a line in a book that reminds them there's still life left in you. And that flicker, that's all it takes to start the return. The return isn't about becoming perfect. It's about becoming honest. It's admitting that what you thought was strength was really just suppression. That what you called loyalty was self-abandonment. That your version of success was built on a foundation that never included your joy. And that realization stings. But it also frees you. Because once you see the truth, you can't unsee it. You may still have to go to the same job, pay the same bills, live in the same neighborhood. But inside, everything's shifting. You're no longer running from the abyss. You're walking out of it with your head up. Climbing back is not about motivation. Motivation fades. Climbing is about discipline, grit, and a willingness to confront the uncomfortable. It's about choosing a different thought when your mind tells you nothing will change. It's about catching yourself before the spiral, interrupting your own patterns, and most importantly, it's about replacing numbness with small acts of self-loyalty. A 5-minute walk, drinking water, calling a friend who reminds you who you are. These aren't grand gestures, but they're anchor points. Each one is a rope tied to something real, something you get to define, something that reminds you you're not powerless. Still, the hardest part of returning is deciding what not to bring back. Some people try to climb with every belief, every habit, every version of themselves they had before the fall, and that weight drags them down again. The truth is, the climb demands shedding. Shedding the idea that your worth is measured by productivity. That money defines success. That struggle means you're failing. That other people's approval is your compass. You can't rise while holding on to what broke you. And this shedding, it's painful. But it's also sacred. It's how you create space for something new to be built. Something grounded in clarity, not fear. Returning doesn't mean life gets easy. It means you become equipped. You begin to trust your own eyes again. You stop outsourcing your validation. You realize you've lived too long through borrowed beliefs and cheap affirmations. Now you want depth, integrity, real power, the kind that doesn't need to shout. You start making decisions not based on survival but on vision. You stop chasing every opportunity and start choosing what aligns with your purpose. That's when people around you begin to notice. Not because you said something, but because your energy changed. You're no longer desperate. You're deliberate. And here's the wild part. The abyss doesn't disappear. It stays there. It waits. For you. For anyone. But when you've made the climb, you no longer fear it. You've seen it. You've been inside it. And you came back stronger. Now, when life pulls you to the edge again, and it will, you don't panic. You pause. You remember. You ground yourself. That's the power of the return. It doesn't make you invincible. It makes you unshakable. Because once you've lost yourself and found your way back, the world can't unmake you. You've already met the darkest part of yourself and survived the conversation. And so, the story doesn't end at the return. It begins again with a new question, one that will follow you from here on out. What will you do with what the abyss gave you? Because it did give you something. Perspective, strength, vision, and maybe, just maybe, something even more valuable than all of that. But we'll talk about that soon. Because where we go next, well, that's where everything starts to change. So now it's your turn to decide. Will you keep pretending the weight isn't crushing you? Or will you finally do the one thing no one else can do for you? Face the part of yourself you've been avoiding. You've seen the signs. The long stares at the ceiling. The deep breaths before opening your bank app. The quiet panic in your chest that no one else hears. You know something has to change. But here's the question that matters now. What are you going to do with everything this abyss taught you? Will you rise, or will you settle? Because the truth is, power isn't found in noise. It's found in stillness. In choices made quietly but consistently. In building a life that feels real, not just looks good online. What would happen if just this once, you put yourself first? What if your healing wasn't a luxury, but a decision? Tell me, what's the first step you're going to take after this video ends? Let me know in the comments. Your story might be the rope someone else needs to start climbing. And if you want more content like this, raw, honest, and made for people like you, subscribe to the channel and turn on the notifications. This is just the beginning. We're going all the way up.